and asks for Emmitt Smith. And I think that the key here is knowing that the Broncos going into this draft wanted to go defense, defense, offense, and then defense. Here we take a look at Detron Smith. You can see, get a good look at him right there out of Texas A&M. This is a kid who will create some holes, who will do some blocking for John Elway. We know they wanted to go to the offensive side of the ball. I still think that they have to address the defensive line that had so much problem putting pressure on the quarterback, and certainly there's a kid on the board that I like, a guy out of Colorado State, a local kid named Brady Smith, who had as good an all-star game as I've ever seen, a guy who actually sent Ogden, a tackle out of my old alma mater, Louisville, down the board. Let's go back to New York.
Well, Tommy, speaking of Ogden, from Louisville, he's just been selected by the G-Men as the Giants have weighed in with their third-round selection. Let's get you caught up here. The end of the second round was Brian Dawkins, Clemson. Happier scoring at home. We told you Ray Mickens, the short but very good athletic corner from Texas A&M to the Jets. Aaron Beasley, the corner, goes to Jacksonville. Johnny McWilliams, who Gary spoke about, to Arizona. Detron Smith, who, Tommy, you were speaking about, goes to Denver. The fourth Texas A&M player, by the way, they're tied with USC with the most, 4 picks. And then Ogden from Louisville goes to the Giants. Dallas up next.
Out here, it's Monday. In here, it's Friday. Tuesday.
First round choice. Jeff Lageman, linebacker, Virginia.
I'll tell you what, Bob, it's obvious to me right now that the Jets just don't understand what the draft's all about.
All right.
You know, you're supposed when you buy in a draft is just as important as who you select. And what they're saying right now is that Jeff Lageman is one of the top 10 players in this draft, and there's no way.
Jeff Lageman made an impact in New York, starting for 6 straight seasons, leading the Jets in sacks 3 times with a career high of 10 in 1990. Last year, he signed with the Jaguars and started the first 11 games before suffering a sprained foot. Well, those Jet fans remember Jeff Lageman. Who was that young man ripping the Jets for that pick at that time? Well, this is like just going back to see you, Mel, and me in the old days. It's very scary. It's a Rod Serling special. Dallas has just selected Clay Sargent Shiver, center from Florida State. Unusual that we waited till the third round to get a Florida State player selected, but that's the way that has gone. We have 4 from Texas A&M and 4 from USC. But Kavika Pittman, Randall Godfrey, Clay Shiver, names who aren't really that familiar to a lot. But as we go down to Chris Myers, these are guys that if you really study the athleticism, it's not that surprising they've gone to a team like the Cowboys, picking second and third. They're just not known to a lot of the football fans. What's the Dallas mood, Chris?
Well, that's right, Chris. They wanted reserve players, players with great athletic ability that they can develop into maybe eventually frontline starters. And Clay Shiver, the center from Florida State, who has not suffered through a fumble since his freshman year and also very intelligently calls the blocking schemes at Florida State, is someone who will eventually replace Ray Donaldson in the eyes of the Cowboys. In fact, 3 of the Cowboys' offensive linemen average out to an age of 36 years old, so that's an area that they may address later in the draft after they address some of their defensive people a little bit earlier. Moments ago, the Cowboys were working the phones in the war room, and they still have 2 more selections later here in the third round, and we'll keep an eye on what they do and talk with Jerry Jones shortly after that. Now let's go back to Chris Berman in New York.
All right, Chris, thank you. Kansas City, Cincinnati, and New Orleans are coming up next. Joe, let's look at what Dallas has done the last couple of years.
I think, first of all, Chris, you have to realize that this is a football team that's won championships, so therefore they're not going to have the high-quality players, so to speak. But you take a look, they got 1 starter out of the last 2 drafts. That's Larry Allen. You know, they said they wanted reserves in this draft. They're running out of room on this board for reserves, to be perfectly honest with you. They have got a lot of reserves, and some of these reserves, now, Shante Carver, Hagan, you know, he's going to have to play. Williams, obviously, running back probably won't play for a while. Watkins, a tight end. Hanna, a guard. Bjornsson, the tight end. These are people that are going to have to start to play. You can't keep drafting reserves. And I'll take the argument. Some people say, well, geez, you know, the Cowboys have been so successful that they've not had the opportunity to get the big starter type of athletes, the guys you could project as instant starters. Well, my case to you would be, take a look at the Buffalo Bills who for a number of years have picked just in front of the Dallas Cowboys. They have been able to find players to fit in that are starters now and can allow them to continue to compete. The Cowboys have got to get some of these guys they call reserves into the starting lineup, and it's going to happen this year for them to maintain the level of excellence that they've played at.
Well, the Cowboys have picked 3 players thus far, Joe. We'll see if they're starters or reserves when the season opens up. The war rooms are busy around the league, so the draft dodgers will be back. '69 slot. We do have a couple of Bengal fans here, I should point out. Just signed a Bengal news, so I know that they're here. Ken Blackman, tackle from Illinois, the third line I picked. Of course, the first 2 guys went a long, long while ago. What about Blackman and Mel to Cincinnati?
Well, here's a guy with the tight end, then he moved to defensive tackle, then, of course, the offensive tackle. And you're getting a guy here that certainly, physically has the frame. 6'5 1/4, 325 pounds, big, strong kid. People say he's not a great athlete, but he's a fiery guy, brings a lot of intensity to the football field. Of course, he was a defensive tackle. You watch his explosiveness with his weight room strength. He can do a job for you. This is a Bengal team that already, of course, added Willie Anderson. They have Melvin Tootin, who they liked last year. This is against Teddy Bruschi, so you can see that even though he may not have great natural athletic ability, does have pretty good feet and does a good job against those quick outside pass rushers. So with Tootin, Anderson, and now adding a guy like Blackman, and of course they have Sargent moving to guard, it's going to be a pretty big line if they do have a little bit better tackle play now with the addition of these 2 players.
Now, David Chula's picked 2 tackles and a big tight end in Battaglia, so they're going for beef. They have the skill players, at least on offense. I mean, he knows he needs some DBs, et cetera, but they're going for some big fellas, kind of going back to their heritage of a decade ago.
Well, I was with Keyshawn Carter last week out in California, and he looks strong. I mean, he's got a wide upper body. He's been in the weight room rehabilitating that knee. He claims it's 100%. He was walking around doing everything he had to do with no problem. So if Keyshawn is back, and they'll take it easy on him in training camp, you won't see him playing any Silver Domes in training camp and in preseason games. Keyshawn Carter is going to be a great addition to this football team. He's almost like a rookie first-round pick coming new to this club.
Let's head back up to Bristol and join Chris Fowler and Mike Lombardi for their thoughts on the latest couple of selections. Fellas?
All right, Chris, another perspective perhaps on Dallas. We saw that Larry Allen, the only starter among the current Cowboys depth chart that they've taken in recent drafts, and all that big column of reserves, Mike, but that doesn't necessarily mean, according to you, that they've failed in the draft.
No, I think they've had successful drafts. I think if you look at Eric Borgson, I think he's going to be a fine player down the line, but he's not going to be Jay Novacek when they convert him from wide receiver to tight end. Alondis Bryce is a good young player that they'll get in there. When you got the Super Bowl champions, it's hard to break in. And I think Dallas does a great job of player development, and I think that's what they're trying to do. You can't judge the draft immediately after 1 or 2 years. You've got to wait some time, and they've got good young players.
So Kavika Pittman not likely to start again. He'll serve an apprenticeship under Charles Haley. Perhaps Randall Godfrey, the one guy Mike believes that Dallas has drafted so far, who actually could come in there and join Larry Allen in that starters column. Not out of Chris Myers. Chris?
In that discussion, the Cowboys believe that they had to lock up their big stars like Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman, and they have the money and, of course, the franchise tag if needed to secure Emmitt Smith, and then they went out and signed Deion Sanders. So that's where you talk about your starter impact, and only 2 players of the last 2 drafts have gone on to a Pro Bowl, one being Marshall Faulk, the other being Larry Allen. So the Cowboys doing some work there, and much has been made since Jimmy Johnson left this team about the draft selections, and of course where the Cowboys are picking is part of the problem. But of the 17 draft choices in the last 2 years by the Dallas Cowboys, 14 of those players are currently on NFL rosters. Let's now go back to Chris Berman in New York.
All right, Chris, thank you. Brady Smith is somebody that we heard Tom Jackson mention a few moments ago from Colorado State. You like this pick for the Saints?
I like it a lot. I think this is a great third-round pick. Here was a guy 210 pounds when he came to Colorado State, 240 as a junior, was up to 260 by the East-West game, and ironically, the guy that he dominated in the East-West game, Roman Oben, went ahead of him in the draft. So nice value pick for New Orleans. Here he is against Kansas State in their bowl game. You can see this guy can come off the corner. He's up to 260. He's got a frame to carry 275 once he gets into the weight room. I compared him in the report to Jeff Lageman because he had gotten his weight up from, say, 240 to 250 up to 260. He's got the frame to carry some more, and he's got intensity. He loves to play the game, fires off the ball, really plays with a lot of enthusiasm. This is a guy who led the entire nation in tackles for loss this year. Of course, Clemens led the Pac-10. This kid led the entire nation, so he was spending a lot of time disrupting things in the opposition's backfield. And I think when you can get a guy like this in the third round for New Orleans, a club that does have some guys up front that can get the job done, this just gives them a little bit more of a rotation system with the veterans that they have and the young kids like Joe Johnson, Wayne Martin, of course, the veteran.
Here's what the Saints have done thus far today to get you posted on where New Orleans is headed. They've gone DB and DB, Alex Molden and Gerard Cherry. and now defensive end and Brady Smith. So obviously they figured